So, who are the Shoeshine Boys? What's their connection to Jimmy O'Neill, the Italian, and the Irish Mafia? And how did four main members wind up dead on the floor of some warehouse on the south side of Chicago the night before Jimmy decides to walk into a bar and kill those Crimson King members? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on this episode of the Shoeshine Boys. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Shoeshine Boys. So today we're going to get into Chapter 3. Chapter 3, but before we do, if this is your first time here, welcome. However, I would strongly advise that what you do is you go back and you start with Chapter 1, because we're going to be talking about Chapter 3 today. I told you last week that I was going to go ahead and give you the opportunity to go ahead and read the Shoeshine Boys in its entirety, all 39 chapters. So if you go into the description, there's a link in there where I'm going to be posting. I'm going to post it every week, so it'll always be in the description. You can go ahead and you can download the Shoeshine Boys. You can be one of the first to go ahead and read the Shoeshine Boys. And give me your comments. Tell me what you like about it. Tell me what you don't like about it. That's the whole reason we're all here. So Chapter 3, Pamela is in the Chicago Tribune. She's in her office. We learn a little bit more about her just from her office. She's extremely meticulous, very organized. We see some awards that she has written for, very prestigious awards for journalism throughout the years, and some photos that, with politicians and things like that. She's obviously very successful, takes her job extremely seriously. And she comes back, and on her desk, Louis has come through. There's two files. One is marked the Shoeshine Murders, which talks about the murder of those four high-ranking members of the Shoeshine Boys. And the other one is marked Jimmy O'Neill. Talks everything he could find on Jimmy, his past, articles that were written up about him after the murders, but also going back to his younger years and just different things from his life that Louis was able to find out for him. So she starts going through the files in her office, and first she goes into the Shoeshine Boys. And it looks like Louis was right. The murders happened literally the night before Jimmy killed those four gang members in Danny's place, the Crimson King members. Four members of the Shoeshine Boys were murdered in that warehouse the night before. And there's a lot of speculation, but no proof that there was some tie in between. It was seen that Jimmy did it as a retaliation for those murders. But again, no proof, no ties between organized crime and Jimmy ever. Just speculation, just talk. And she goes on to read about the four men that were murdered. One of them was called, they were all about Jimmy's age. They were named Michael Mick was one of them. Sal. Another guy was Liam. And I go into a lot more history on them and who they are and everything in the book, obviously. But a guy by the name of Liam, who was known on the streets as Buckets. And the final one was a guy by the name of Pat. And you're going to learn a lot more about these characters, obviously, as the book goes on, because they're going to become very main characters. And so it just talks about them and how they were murdered and how they were found. But she comes across something interesting that she takes a note of. The lead detective's name was a guy by the name of Michael Kowalski. Now, you'll remember the name Kowalski, also known as the Polak. The Polak is the individual, she doesn't know this, obviously, but he's the individual who called Jimmy the day that Jimmy went and he killed those four members when he snapped when he was in the bar, and then he went and got his gun and killed those four men. Primarily Kowalski, the Polak. And it looks as if now, again, she doesn't know this, but you and I know it from reading the book, that that's probably the reason that Jimmy did do it. Kowalski probably told him, because he was the lead detective on the Shoeshine Murders. He was first on the scene, or one of the first senior people on the scene. And he probably tipped off Jimmy. He probably called up Jimmy and told Jimmy, because we know he did call Jimmy. That's probably what he was calling him for, which would explain why Jimmy would go and kill those 4 men. But we don't know that for sure yet. So she takes notes of it, and she decides that she wants to find a little bit more about this Kowalski. He'd probably be a good source. She doesn't suspect that he's involved or anything. She just thinks he could probably give her some information on the Shoeshine Boys, and if he knows anything about Jimmy, because she wants to really kind of get to know about Jimmy before she commits to including him in this series on Redemption. She wants to make sure that he's legit, that he's not just pulling some scam, that he's not just doing all this stuff to make good time or to get some privileges inside prison or something else, that he is truly trying to redeem himself, to pay for the sins of his past, I suppose. So she wants to find out as much about him as she can. So she writes it down, and then she looks in her little diary and phone book as far as who her contacts are, her contact list, and she's scrolling down through different police, and she finds somebody in the 8th district, which is the district that Kowalski worked out of, a guy, a detective there, Sergeant Miles Davis. No, not Miles Davis. He used a musician. I can't remember. Sergeant Davis, I think, was his name. But anyway, she goes and she thinks, well, he'll be a good source. I'll call him. You have to forgive me because I've written this book a while ago. I don't remember all the details. I'm just talking to you live, telling the story here to the best of my memory. And she thinks, well, I'll call him. Surely he can give me some information, maybe a contact number or something on Kowalski, so I can arrange to go ahead and meet with him. So she calls him, and the sergeant tells her, yeah, I knew Kowalski. Don't know him too well. I know him. No, he retired a few years back. Good cop, but he kind of always operated in the gray, meaning that he got results, he got the job done, but he didn't always, I guess, follow the rules. And there was a lot of talk that, well, maybe he did kind of operate outside, and maybe do some favors for people outside of, the regulation and the proper way that detectives are supposed to, conduct business and do their jobs and investigate. But he was a good cop overall. He got the job done, which is all that matters. So he says that he doesn't know where he's at, but he says he'll ask around. So she says, thanks very much. Call ends there. And then she goes on to look into the file on Jimmy O'Neill. And the file is basically, there's a lot of articles, obviously, about it because he was front page news after those 4 murders. Again, the speculation, successful businessman snaps, walks into a bar, kills 4 high-ranking gang members of the Crimson Kings, and throws his life away. Just puts the gun down, just confesses to it. He never tried to fight it. He never tried to do anything other than he just pled guilty, sat in silence, went and he accepted his punishment, and he's been sitting in the jail cell ever since. And that's where he is today. And that's where the story is that primarily he's done things to try to turn around. Went and he got his degree and got his MBA and starting this course, and he's trying to do clean time and make the best of it. But he's in prison for life. He's not getting out. He's murdered 4 men in cold blood, so he's not getting out. But so she reads all about that. But then she starts digging deeper, and it goes into articles. She knows from the file that, he got a rough start in life. Like I told you, his mother took off. His father was an alcoholic. The father died when Jimmy was young, actually, and the mother was nowhere to be found. So from a young age, she was trying to figure out, did he become a ward of the state, or how did he, he was like 12 years old when the father died. His sister, a few years older, I think she was probably, maybe about 16 at the time. So just trying to piece that all together and figure out what he did from that point on. But she comes across an article, and the article talks about Jimmy, but very briefly. The article is really about a successful Irish businessman by the name of Sean O'Sullivan. Sean is going to become a very major character inside our story here, the Shoeshine Boys. And it was primarily the headline was the South Side mourns the death of local businessman Sean O'Sullivan. And the story goes on to talk about Sean, how he was an Irish immigrant that came here, and he started up a bar called the Pride of Erin. He was very successful, owned a number of different businesses throughout the South Side, and he went and he owned a lot of rental properties. Very successful, wealthy man, but a very common man. The people of the South Side loved him. He was one of their own. They deemed him as, and it was his funeral, and there was the streets were full of mourners and people talking and coming to pay their respects, and it talked about Jimmy that because Sean had never been married, he had no children, no known relatives, that it's speculated that James O'Neill, Jimmy, is probably going to be the heir to his estate, that he's going to go ahead and get everything that Sean owned. That Jimmy was somewhat of a protege to Sean. Sean had taken him under his wing and had done a lot of business with Jimmy, and was quite fond of him, and even went on to talk about he was kind of seen as somewhat of a son to Jimmy. So she thought, okay, so that's where Jimmy kind of got his wealth and his businesses from. Seems like he inherited a lot of it. But something really stood out to her when she's looking at the photos. And it wasn't Jimmy, it wasn't Sean, it was one man in the photo who she knew. That was a guy by the name of Ronnie Magliano. And Ronnie Magliano was primarily, at the time, he would have been a captain in the Chicago Italian syndicate, the mob, primarily Italian mafia. But since then, over the last 14, because this picture was taken 15 years ago, because I think Sean died probably a little bit less than a year or so before Jimmy killed those four men. He went and he was one of the mourners. And she knows that, he's a very powerful now. I think he's number 2 in the Italian mafia now, like a consigliere in the Italian mafia right now. At that time, he would have been a captain. And she knows that he did not go to mourn some local Irish businessman for no reason. He had ties. He knew Sean. And she knew that right then, that there's some connection between Magliano, Sean, which obviously links to Jimmy. So she knows that somehow there's some ties, through to the Italian mafia. She doesn't know what it is, but she knows that Ronnie Magliano was not one of the mourners at this funeral for no reason. So she makes a note of that. She makes a few other notes of some things, and decides that, yeah, this is definitely a story I want to look into. And I want to learn more about this Jimmy O'Neill. So she decides that enough work is done. She decides she needs to clear her head, so she's going to walk home. She lives downtown. Chicago Tribune building is, if you know it, is located in downtown Chicago. She decides that she's going to go ahead and she's going to walk to her home, which is only a couple miles away. It's right across from Union Station. At the time, I believe it was the Sears Tower. It may have been renamed at this stage, but I think at the time this was roughly about 2016. Is when the story is currently taking place at this time. Jimmy kills those four men in about 2002. This is 14 years later, so it'll be about 2016. I believe it was the Sears Tower. They may have renamed it, but regardless, she lives in a place called Presidential Towers. So she walks through the city and all the hustle and bustle of Chicago and the commuters and everything else. And she gets to Presidential Towers, takes the elevator up to her small little apartment. But again, reflection of who she is. Very minimalistic, very clean, immaculately clean actually. And she goes, and it's her sanctuary. She decides enough work. She pours herself a nice glass of wine, leaves her case, and the files and all the information. She decides, I'll work on that tomorrow, enough work for one day. And she starts sipping a glass of wine, playing a little bit of music. She pulls out her smartphone, and she goes onto one of the dating apps. And, starts swiping left, right, whatever. I'm not sure which way you swipe for, if you like somebody or don't, or whatever the case may be on these dating apps. But that's what she's doing. But it just shows that she's single. And she is available. She's on the market. She's out there actively looking to meet somebody. And that's where chapter 3 ends. So next week, chapter 4, we're going to learn more about Jimmy. We're going to learn more about, see Jimmy in prison now. All this time later, we're going to be reintroduced to him, see what he's like now. We're going to learn more about the warden. So make sure that you come back for next week. And please remember that this is I want this to be a collaboration. Tell me what you like in the comments. Tell me what you don't like. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs down. Again, if you do give me a thumbs down, no issue with that at all, because I want to know. But tell me why. Tell me why in the comments. Why don't you know? Is there something that you don't like about the story so far? But if you have some ideas that you think could improve it, again, collaboration. The story has not been published. There's still time to make changes. And that's really what I'm striving to create here, a community of like-minded, crime lovers like ourselves, where we can go ahead and share ideas, and we can together, we can go ahead and create the perfect crime novel, specifically organized crime, because that's my passion. So, till next week, please, stay safe. And make sure that you like, subscribe, and click that thumbs up button. Okay? See you next week. All the best.